This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight or this afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Stephanie Staller, and I have the pleasure of moderating the Facebook group, The Science of Reading for Administrators, What Teachers Want You to Know, along with our two amazing presenters tonight. So I'm just kind of the MC. I'm going to be recording and watching the chat while they are sharing with you. And our presenters tonight are Sharon Dunn, who is a former principal from Loudon Elementary in the Panama Buena Vista School District in Bakersfield, California, and Brent Conway, who is an assistant superintendent in the Pentucket Regional School District in Massachusetts. So we are bi-coastal here today. Both coasts represented in the message about how building administrators can work a schedule to fit in an effective literacy block, effective intervention services, thinking about the school-wide MTSS implementation and how do you make that a reality. It really is a puzzle. And so these folks have a lot of experience making it work, and they are going to be sharing with us tonight. Your lines are muted when you join, but you're able to unmute. And so there will be a time at the end for questions, and we would welcome you to unmute then for Q&A. And otherwise, you can use the chat box, which is in the top right corner. In the middle of the top of your screen, there's a place to toggle between viewing everyone or just viewing the person who's speaking. So you might want to set that to viewing everyone, although nobody's letting themselves be viewed except for the three of us. So that's okay. Oh, thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Good for you.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to kick it over. All right. Is that Bobby Joe? Thank you, Bobby Joe. It's nice to see you. Okay, so I'm going to turn things over to Sharon and Brent. And Brent, you can show your screen.
Sure. All right. We have some slides, and I think, Sharon, you're going to get started. So we'll see if we can get this going. Here we go. All right.
All right. Well, welcome to our Scheduling for Literacy Elementary Schools MTSS. Hope you're going to glean some good information from a couple of practitioners, just sharing what we've learned along the way. Brent, if you will advance the slide. Thanks. This quote is very it's a provoking thought. It's really what kicked me into gear as a new principal. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets, by W. Edwards Deming. And I thought, boy, when I first started at Loudon Elementary, it was quite a challenge. A new principal and the outgoing principal opened a new school, and it was 09, 10, and that year, those years where California had a lot of layoffs and teachers were displaced and placed at other schools. In my district, there are 24 schools, 19 elementaries, and at a high poverty school. And I tell you, it was full of challenges. So the first year was lay of the land. Second year had to get some data. And the data revealed some alarming results, like 72% of our kindergarten students at the end of the year were entering first grade highly at risk. And I thought, it just seemed insurmountable to be able to meet the needs of all these struggling readers. So when I read this quote, my first year as principal and second year, especially seeing the data, I thought every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets, and we're not getting good results. So we need to change some things. And that was the stepping off point of a journey to creating an MTSS schedule and implementing MTSS systems so we could change our results and better meet the needs of our learners. So this quote just kicked me into gear and helped me be action oriented, because I did not like the results we were getting. And I was responsible as the principal for the learning outcomes. And I thought, we've got to do something different. So I just wanted to share that with you. That was the starting point for MTSS. Go ahead and announce.
Yeah, I think, to Sharon's point, you won't hear much tonight around curriculum, instruction, a lot necessarily about the details of evidence-based instruction in the science of reading. This is really about the systems side of it, right? And both Sharon and I, obviously on completely different coasts here, I'm in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. And this is the systems side of things. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll get into it. And what we want to do is just have you have a sense of who we are. And so my name is Brent Conway. I'm the current assistant superintendent for the Pentucket Regional School District in Massachusetts, small regional district, about 2,500 students. But I spent 12 years as a principal in Melrose, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston. And while I was there, I was a principal, took over in 2007 as the principal of Lincoln Elementary School, which much like Sharon's school was the school in the community that had the high needs population. So we were 50% high needs. There were 5 elementary schools in Melrose. There were no buses. Every kid walked to school. They were all neighborhood schools. And we had the little neighborhood that bordered sort of on the urban edge of Boston. And while the rest of Melrose is a rather affluent community to live in, the community where Lincoln School was very mixed. And that was a school traditionally, it is literally on the other side of the tracks, the Boston T line that comes out. And we had the apartment buildings. It was sort of the gateway into that suburban city that we were. And it had historically been the lowest performing school in the district. So that was sort of a little bit of my path of I took over as a principal. I do not consider myself an expert on the science of reading. That is not, I see some great questions people ask about, what order you teach the short vowels. And I'm not really the best person to answer. I'm dozens and dozens of other people, and I rely on my teachers for that. But what you're looking at here is a graph of the school where I was principal at in Melrose. And we knew in 2007, we were not doing very well, much like Sharon shared, and she's going to show you a little bit more on her story. So we took a very systems approach to this, and I started with data as well and correlating that data to MCAS proficiency. So MCAS is the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System. And we started with DIBELS, and from there, and we implemented some new curriculum. This is not a story about the curriculum tools, though. It's much more of a story around setting up a schedule and a data system that allowed us to make the best use of that. So I have a phrase, we'll get to it a little bit later, and we adopted as a school: annual growth for all and catch-up growth for those who are behind. And that's really what our system that we put in place with a schedule and the assessments allowed us to do. But a lot of professional development as well, building up the knowledge base of the teachers, giving them the tools. But we had a schedule in place that allowed us to give kids what they needed, when they need it, with the intensity that they needed it, and the data that helped feed us that information. So what you see here is over the course of the 7 years as I was principal there, before I went on to the middle school and now in Pentucket, this was the performance of the students, bringing it up to nearly 80% overall, but also really closing the achievement gap of our students with disabilities from a low point of only 15% of them being proficient. So I wish I still had the DIBELS data from then to share with you. I don't have it. I have DIBELS data now. But of course, with the pandemic, everything's a little interrupted. So that's a little bit of my story. I have since, as I said, I became a middle school principal. We implemented tiered models and systems there. And now as an assistant superintendent, doing the same thing, but across the entire district, getting all of our elementary schools to have the same schedules, at least from a functional standpoint, and using the same data systems and the same data meetings. And then moving on from there with added intervention, teacher knowledge, professional development, all those things we need to make the best use at that time. So And Sharon's story.
Well, this is the California assessment end of the year called the CASP. And some of you may be very familiar with it, but this is over 5 years. And to look at this bar graph, it's just a testament, because Loudon, when I became principal, is about 74% poverty. Within 4 short years, it went to 88% poverty, 30% EL, 70% Hispanic, 14% African American, and high mobility. So we really had to step up to the plate. Our student needs were changing, and there were a lot of gaps. We were not instructionally sound the way we needed to be. So as you can see in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 at the bottom, the blue bar is the first year CASP came out, and we had dismal results. And it was a little embarrassing as an administrator to go to an administrators meeting, and all of the 24 schools, but 19 elementaries and 5 junior highs. The data was posed in rank order, and who was last but our Loudon Elementary. And that was a difficult position to be in, but yet I knew from our data, because we implemented Acadian's data, and we knew from the data we were making changes, and we had just started a differentiation of the core, and then we layered upon that a tier 2 intervention system, and with our schedule, and we had 2 walk to learns, basically trying to desperately meet the needs of our kids. And I knew from progress monitoring data that we weren't going to be in last place for long. There was a groundswell, and it was coming, because we could see the growth from progress monitoring. So as you can follow the graph, the second year is in red, and then gold, and then green, and then the last year, which before COVID hit in 2019, our CASP scores shot up. And when you're nearly 60% overall, but that's a lot better than 21% just in 4 short years. This is what MTSS implementation with fidelity systems, having differentiation of the core and a robust intervention system, meeting the needs of students, looks like. It doesn't happen overnight, but year after year, you can see the steady growth. And there's a table at the top that shows the growth rate, and just it's pretty textbook. I mean, I'm really proud of our teachers worked so hard, and our students worked hard, and that we stayed the course. And success breeds success. The excitement when the kids started to read, we fixed the reading problem. When they began to read, things fell into place, and it just gained momentum. And I was just really kind of sorry that we didn't have CASP results for 2020, because as you look at those 6th grade scores, it's just a stair step. And it's harder to close the gap in 6th grade. You've got intermediate learners, but this is the part of cleaning up their accuracy and having them become fluent and building their vocabulary, and doing well on the CASP is huge for a extremely high poverty school with disadvantaged kids. They don't have the same supports at home, and it's just I don't know. I was hoping for a 2020 result. But that being said, I think on the next slide, Brent, yeah, this is a snapshot of something in 2020. It was January 2020. It was our Acadian scores, and this is 6th grade, and it's accuracy portion that you can see that I think it's 93% of our 6th graders were reading accurately and fluently at Loudon. I mean, 93%. These kids have a chance in life. And to have the groundswell from starting in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, coming into 6th grade when they can read with 93% accuracy, this is all due to the systems. And I just applaud our teachers. They really did well, worked hard, and I just wanted to share what can happen, what the outcomes can be when you have a schedule that really blocks off time, and everybody, all resources are going in specific time blocks, and your professional development, it's all around the master schedule. So I just wanted to share that piece of information. This is what our schedule looked like. And as I mentioned before, we had 2 walk to learns, and now you may think, what? Are you crazy? It really was exactly what our students needed. We began with the green blocks. You see the bright green blocks, that's differentiation of the core. The ELA block, we have a 2.5-hour block for English language arts.
And I should say, don't worry if you can't see this. The links are at the end of the slides, and we'll share them all so you can blow them up and you can examine it more closely. So sorry.
Yeah, no, good point, Brent. That's exactly right. Because the little time blocks, it's in small print, but I just am talking generally so you can see that go by the colors. The first walk to learn is differentiation of the core, and that's for a 45-minute section of time in grades K through 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 had an hour of differentiation of the time. And so we staggered the blocks because we had paraprofessionals that were trained alongside our teachers with the science of reading, and they would push in and create smaller groups. So for instance, if there were 4 teachers in, let's just say 6th grade, and you take all of if there were 100 students in 6th grade and there are 4 teachers, one teacher would take the lowest 18 students rank ordered through measures in Acadians and their CASP scores. And then we push in 2 paraprofessionals. So we had 3 groups meeting the needs during the core ELA time. Then the next teacher number 2, would take the next 22 to 23 students, push in 2 paraprofessionals, and create small groups and meet the needs, because these kids were strategic. They were not quite at benchmark, but they needed some more intensive support during the core. And then the 3rd teacher would take the students that were proficient on benchmark, and just the class would swell to maybe 35, 36 kids, no paraprofessional, but they were all on grade level as far as reading, and they could just start to fly. And then the enrichment group, the last teacher would take the enrichment kids and really push during that time with enrichment activities for core. So that's how our first walk to learn was. And then the orange block represents the intensive or the intervention block, and that's a whole different type of walk to learn. And that's for the kids that are not proficient and they need reading skill cleanup. And how do we know that? It's through a diagnostic test for phonemic awareness and phonics. That's K through 6. And that's where we share all the adults and available adults in the building to work on specific skill deficits, clean them up in 3-week cycles, and then they would reassess at the end of 3 weeks and then clean up their next lowest skill deficit. And they rearrange themselves. Well, we rearrange the students every 3 weeks according to their lowest skill deficits, because they're all at different levels, but the small groups are grouped with like lowest skill deficits, if that makes sense. And that's really cleaning up the skills to build accurate readers. And then once they were accurate, they would work on we'd have fluency groups to build fluency, and then specific comprehension groups. And that was beautiful, especially in the intermediate grades where we were able to build those comprehension skills. And that's why they were able to do so well on the CASP and work on writing during this time, and all of that coming together. But the outcomes of that green and the orange blocks, it's just we attached it to recesses when we could. As you can see, the blue are recess times, the purple is the lunch times, and you hammer it out at your building to build your schedule where your most valuable resources are. All of our adults were on campus the paraprofessionals between 8 and 11, or we'd stagger some start times for the paraprofessionals, 8:30 or 9, depending, in 3-hour blocks. So you just can be creative and then push in with personnel. I'm sure there's lots of questions to that, but that's it in a nutshell.
So we're going to show everyone some visual samples like this one and some others, and then we'll actually get to the bullet points of how you might theorize this and conceptualize this in your own building. And we can come back to these too if we want. So this is an example, and this is sort of blown up a little bit. The approach I've taken in the district I'm in now, we share specialists, elective teachers, fine arts, there's all sorts of names we call them, right? We share them in the buildings because our school buildings are, maybe they range from 300 kids to 500 kids. So, a PE teacher is in a building for 3 days, and then they're in a different building for another 2 days. So those are the types of things that we have to coordinate in the district we're in now. So the first thing we do is really is to schedule and set up the specialist in the building so that we can arrange the time around them, because those are the hurdles when you start to think about it that are either district-wide or even in your own building, how you want to schedule your literacy blocks. It's all around those, because what those do is they give the common planning times to the teachers as well. So we want to think about that. I know when I first took over it as a principal, our fine and performing arts director scheduled all of the electives. Well, of course, he wanted to have the first grade art classes all in a row. And I just said, we can't do that. The first grade teachers need to have the same time off. And well, this is the way we do it. Well, we changed that because that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, Brent, if I can add on that, that's exactly, it is a change of thought for the district and district specialists that come in. I would just email our schedule, but it's developing those shared beliefs that we need to meet the kids' needs where they are. And so the specialists would be very accommodating and go, oh, okay, I see. It was difficult sometimes to get their schedule built around our schedule, but it was done, and it was very successful. So to that point, it can be done.
It's about the priority of making sure that the teaching of literacy in the elementary school has the scheduling priority. And yet, oddly, in order to do so, the first thing we schedule is music, art, and PE, and all of those, right? So this is an example, sort of once we do the specialist schedule, then you go and you do your building schedule. This is a school building with 3 classrooms per grade level, which is, kind of probably an average size elementary school, maybe on the smaller side for some places. And you can see here the green, how it goes. We stagger the blocks, and then you can see the literacy blocks staggered. And this is all done very much on purpose. Well, I have not necessarily led a building or a district through a walk to read or walk to learn model, much like Sharon has. In theory, we could have, we just didn't necessarily do that. That's almost a more intensive approach with more data. And it's impressive to do and see. But this is set up so we can flood grade levels with as many personnel as we can at times where we know that we're going to have small group targeted instruction. So you see here, for instance, this is 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade. The second half of that literacy block for us was small group targeted instruction. And that's what that was all about. And we can move staff from one grade level to the next. Generally, we try to cluster them in like 2 or 3 grade spans so we don't have people running through 5 grades or 6 grades. But you can see how here it all sort of staggers with it. And every building's a little bit different, right? Like there's all kinds of little twists and turns. And if you thought you were coming tonight to have us schedule your building, I'm sorry to disappoint you. That's not possible in the evening. But maybe you can get some ideas. So I think, yep. So here's the next. Here we go. So I just pulled this, zeroed in a little bit more so you could really see by the minutes. So these are 5-minute sections. Like that's how we schedule this. And this is done in Excel or Google, because you got to be able to move things around. There are systems out there where you can, I've scheduled middle schools and high schools before, and we do it in the computer system, but it's not like this. This is really precise, and this is hard to do in a computer system. So you kind of got to sketch this one out, and then you build the computer system to do it for you. So the next slide, Sharon.
Yeah. Well, to the point of making sure everyone's on board, your music specialist, PE, anyone on campus, psychologist, resource teachers, special ed, everybody, it's just all the staff. It's really coming back to the questions of our beliefs as a school site, especially that's the jumping off point for us was the data. The data revealed so much of the needs of our students, and we had to step back and take a look and ask ourselves, do we believe it's the purpose of our school to ensure that all students learn at high levels? Okay. And then do we acknowledge that students learn at different rates and with different levels of support? Okay. And then have we created a schedule that guarantees students will receive additional opportunities for learning in a systematic way, regardless of who their teacher might be? And that's one thing I shared with my staff. I said, I have 5 grandchildren, and if they were at school with me, I would want to be able to put them in any one of your classes and get the same excellent teaching. And so I just truly love these 3 questions because it really zeroes in on the needs of the students, and especially the middle one. Do we acknowledge the students learn at different rates with different levels of support? And then the last one, the schedule that guarantees students will receive additional opportunities for learning in a systematic way, regardless of who their teacher might be. And so I would, the beauty of a schedule and blocking off times in English language arts, as I shared the differentiation of the core, the 4 grade level teachers shared the whole grade level. It wasn't just their class, but for a portion of the day, all of the students in first grade, would mix up, depending on if they were intensive, strategic, benchmark, or enrichment. And so it really forced the collaboration in the grade level to lesson plan, design together. I mean, it meant a lot because they were sharing the data of the students across the grade level. Are we meeting the needs of this child, and why is this one struggling? And maybe this one, we've got to give a diagnostic because they're lagging in this area. That's the beauty of the schedule, and going back to the beliefs where everyone's rowing in the same direction. Oh, and this lends to Hattie's, best practices with the effect size. It shows collective, to that point, collective teacher efficacy, 1.57 effect size. That's, staff's shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes, including those who are disengaged or disadvantaged. I mean, it just doesn't get better than that. That's truly, collective teacher efficacy. And then response to intervention, it's a 1.07 effect size, MTSS, to the point of our schedule.
And that, that whole shared belief is really critical because, I know when I took over as a building principal, the first grade teachers, second grade, they were all used to just making their own schedule for the entire day. Mm-hmm. And some of them had been doing it for years. As well, I really like to do this at this time. And we're trying to coordinate things with multiple grade levels, and you can't anymore. And a lot of them had a hard time with that. And then after we put the new schedule in that second year where everything was coordinated, I think they began to see how they are getting more support. And, instead of, it used to maybe just be one teacher who knew the ins and outs and would get to the right people at the right time. And that person, she had the best schedule in that building, and everyone else was on their own after that. And that's not the way it works. It's all very coordinated, and it's around that shared belief of shared ownership. We had a moment too where we were in the library at a staff meeting, and you could see out the window, and it was where some of the apartment buildings were, where some of our, there's 400 kids in that building. There were 28 different languages spoken in the homes of the 400 kids, and you could see out the window, you could see that neighborhood. And I remember one of the teachers sort of saying, "So, well, doesn't everyone understand, who we are and what we have to deal with?" And I just remember opening the window shade and saying, "Look out there. That's not changing. You need to."
Good.
And there was the shared belief, and we were sort of off and running at that point. So.
And success breeds success. That's the beauty of data.
Yep.
Because the data drives your instruction, and it helps you understand, oh, we're doing this well, but we aren't so much, we're not really meeting the needs in this area. Phonemic awareness, that was the big one for us in kindergarten and first grade. We weren't meeting the needs in phonemic awareness. That got us, the data helped us figure out what to do. This slide represents MTSS. You've hopefully all heard the simple view of reading, and this is the simple view of implementing a tiered system for teaching literacy. So it just puts it simply stated, the systems and structure multiplied by instruction and curriculum will give you MTSS for teaching literacy to all students. So when we look at the systems and structures box, that includes your schedule, your personnel, your management of all of this, universal screening data collection. Do we have a universal screener? And what do we, who's inputting the data? How do we collect it? How do we make it living and breathing and getting it into the hands of all our teachers? So it's driving the instruction. Diagnostic data and protocols, the same thing with that for your interventions, and then progress monitoring. That keeps the systems and structures moving. And then instruction curriculum side is your instructional routines and differentiation of the core. And the 5 essential literacy skills, are they being addressed in core as well as intervention? Is it explicit, systematic, and sequential? Are we in structured literacy, or are we still in balanced literacy? How is this working? And then evidence-based curriculum and intervention, that's the instruction curriculum side. So the systems and structures, instruction and curriculum multiplied together, then gives you your MTSS. So that's just a pretty simplistic but effective way of looking at things.
And Sharon and I, oddly, have come up with the same sort of visual to represent this, and it's sort of a play on the simple view. And I won't go through everything in here, but the one thing as we're presenting to probably mostly administrators or people who work in some capacity that way, and that instruction and curriculum side of things, we don't do that on a daily basis. Like I don't do the teaching. You don't do the teaching. We have to make sure they get the professional development and they understand what it is they need to do. But once it's there, that's the teacher's work. On the other side of it, though, that systems and structure, administratively, that is our work. That's where we put our time in to make sure we build up that side of this equation. And you could have the most knowledgeable teachers in the state who know all kinds of stuff, and you've got them the best curriculum in the world. If you've got a lousy schedule and you don't have data to inform it, their impact will be minimal. They will not have the impact they're intended to have. And then on the flip side, we can get a great schedule and get all the data systems. If your teachers don't know how to utilize those tools, or you're using something like a balanced literacy curriculum, it won't have the same impact you need it to have. But so Sharon and I have the same, we've sort of come from the same mindset around this, and then it's the system side administratively is where a lot of our weight is. So
critical, yeah.
So thinking of that, now it's just sort of getting into the theoretical structure of what you try to do with your schedule. So, and I had shared this with you before, we want annual growth for all and catch-up growth for those who are behind. It's actually a title of a book. It was written about the story in Kennewick, Washington, and I had my staff read that in 2008, 2007, 2008. We all read it one summer. It's a very quick and easy read. It is not the science of reading. It really is about the systems, the bigger picture approach to trying to get all kids to learn to read. How do we get that catch-up growth, though? Those kids who are behind, you saw those gap closing measures, right? Well, you need a building schedule that allows you to pull any one of those 6 levers that are down there. And you need a data system that informs you of which lever needs to be pulled and when. The title of the book is Annual Growth for All and Catch-Up Growth for Those Who Are Behind. And these 6 things down here, this comes from Dr. George Batch. He's an RTI guy. He's out of Florida. He's phenomenal. He really is, right? And there's really, other than, we can talk about curriculum and instruction, there's really about 6 things we can do that make a big impact on students. And this is it, right? We can give kids more instructional time, right? If they're behind, they're not going to catch up just by getting the same thing everyone else is. It's not going to happen for most of them, right? So more instructional time, either with a win block or an intervention block. Smaller instructional groups. So that's why you set up your schedule so you can flood a classroom and you can get the neediest kids are in groups with 2, 3, no more than 4 kids, right? More precisely targeted at right skill. This is where the data comes in. You need the data to know. You don't put all the level H's together because they all need different things, right? So you use assessments, whether it's Acadians or Dibbles, whatever it is that you use, that informs you, and you group the students by those skill needs, and you give them what they need when they need it, much like how Sharon spoke about earlier. More systematic instruction and sequences. So this is program oriented. Now we're getting into real interventions. We got to make sure we're being very sequential and systematic in our instruction, especially for those who are behind. More guided practice, so that's more attention, more adult modeling, the I do, we do, you do, and more opportunities for error correction. Teachers hate this one because it's telling kids they're wrong sometimes, right? And that's hard to do. But this is how you stop bad habits, right? And stop them in their tracks. This is about it when it comes to the types of things you can do for kids. You can be more explicit with your instructions, so that's just good teaching. But these are the 6 pillars, or I call them levers, because you have to have a schedule that allows you to do any one of these 6 at any time, and a data system that tells you which one to do. And I say this all the time, and I love the arts. My kids are musician, all of it. When PE and art is taught should not dictate when and how we teach literacy. Take control of your schedule, right? So we really need to prioritize that literacy instruction and start with how much time do you need to devote to your core instruction, whether it's 120 minutes at K to 3, 90 minutes, 4, 5, and 6. It doesn't all need to be together, but conceptually there are a few models, and you heard Sharon talk about one of them earlier, Walk to Read. There's a few models. There's variables, different grade level structures. Some of you might have a pre-K to 2 building. Some of you might have one grade level, one classroom per grade level, but there's a few things to consider as you get into the scheduling here.
Yeah, you're right. The data drove our model as far as 2.5 hours of English language arts, because we had so many at risk. And then we flipped it around year after year with instruction. We turned it all around, but the data drove the model, and we kept the 2.5 hour block in place because that's the needs. It works well. So some of you may not have that luxury. I don't know, but it's just, I was able to implement that.
Yeah. So these are some things to consider, and you see these in both the things that Sharon and I spoke about with some variability. You try to flood that grade level with personnel. And if we went back to one of the earlier slides, you see how the blocks are actually staggered, right? And you think about whole class instruction. Well, I'm not sending in special education teachers and paraprofessionals and interventionists during whole class instruction, because that's a really expensive way to hold the walls up, right? So Whole class instruction is mainly just a teacher and maybe a paraprofessional if that's needed, right? But when I know we're getting to the small group time where we're going to do those, whether it's 45 minutes or 60 minutes and it's target instruction, I want all hands on deck for that grade level. And I want to stagger the blocks at least in a couple of grade levels where I can move personnel that way, right? So that's something to consider. Sharon talked about the walk to read model. Do you want to just touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, when I first began the differentiation of the core, or walk to learn is what we called it.
Walk to learn, yes.
The mindset of our district, when the board approved X amount of paraprofessionals across the district. Well, at Loudon, we changed, it was commonplace that a paraprofessional was kind of like a teacher's secretary, or to do help with grading, help with certain students at some point. Well, we just took a different approach and combined all the paraprofessionals at the grade level and or in the school, and started utilizing them for small group instruction with students. Of course, we provided professional development for this, and therefore, but that was a huge shift for our school, and let alone our district. There were some feathers ruffled, and we had to talk to the union, and we had to communicate the goals and all of this. And then as the dust settled and our outcomes started improving, then the district kind of took a look like, oh yeah, that's a great way to utilize our adults in the building. So it just sometimes takes thinking outside the box. If you're in a district or a school that's confined and you're thinking, boy, that would never happen at my school, you might be surprised. You just need to start. It begins with a conversation around data, knowing your students' needs, knowing what, where instructionally you're not meeting the needs, and what are the best ways that we can meet their needs. And for us, it was the walk to learn, and then the intervention walk to learn as well.
And then the other is we talk about a win block, what I need, or an intervention block. That's in addition to, those are for the kids, they need more. And if you don't have that time, you have to look at where else can you take it. It's unpopular. We don't like saying taking away social studies or science time. But if a kid is not reading, we do have to really learn to prioritize that. Hopefully our core tier 1 curriculum has a lot of content and nonfiction embedded in it, which would be helpful to sort of backfill that. We know it doesn't really replace direct instruction in social studies and science, but hopefully there's a lot of good vocabulary instruction going on. And 90 minutes, it is hard to do this with less than 90 minutes. That is for sure. It is hard. I mean, we're talking 120 minutes. Sharon was up over 200.
No, 150.
150. Okay. Yeah. So, it doesn't all need to be consecutive either. You can find ways to do it. But I always think of it in intervals, whether it's 15-minute intervals, 30-minute intervals, because those are like small group, 15 or 20-minute are small group. And if you don't do things like that, and if everything's very staggered, you get these like odd, wasted 10 minutes here or there in the schedule. So you want to try to minimize that and have everything try to move as it can, right?
Great.
No. So one of the other big drivers is special education. It is a huge driver. It is different in every state. Even though IDA is federal law, its implementation is different in every state. So I use 3 very unofficial terms to help people conceptualize how you build special ed support in. And in the end, it's all driven by the IEPs, but it's driven by what the kids have. But if you build a schedule that is meant to meet kids' needs, you can begin to start to change those IEPs and have those services match what you can do in the schedule. So you have the targeted in-class. So in Massachusetts, that's grid B. That's inclusion services, right? Teacher, interventionists, and anyone going into the room, and they're just getting more targeted, but it's in the core of the classroom. It's just when we're doing small group. So it's not like it's an additional intervention. It's just more time and more focus, right? Then you have the in addition to, and this is that win block or the intervention block. This can be for special education students, or it could be for Title I, reading interventionists. So they're getting all their core instruction, and then they get something additional beyond what the core is. Sometimes it's more work on the core, sometimes it's backfilling, but that's where the data drives how you group those kids, right? And then the last is really the in place of, and this is the part that always worries me, in that some districts and places, once a child qualifies for special education, it's always somewhere else. And that's the part I always find mind-boggling, and that just because you're a student with a disability doesn't mean your needs can't be met in the general ed, so long as it's supported correctly. I have to say, all special education students are general ed students first. And once you really pull a child out, you have to have really good reason of why you need to do that. And to do that when kids are really young does not make a lot of sense. If you have a schedule in place that allows for this intervention and these added blocks of time that are really focused, you will really minimize that in place of type of support for kids as it moves along. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen at times. It certainly should, and it can be very helpful to kids when they need it. But those are big decisions. So we have some other resources here, sample schedules. So up here, the first two are some schedules you saw up there. The first three are schedules in the slide. So you can click those and get the PDF version. You can work with it from there. There is a link here to schedulingassociates.com. There's a bunch of sample school schedules on there to help you sort of see how else people conceptualize things. And then two really excellent resources. Neither of these resources are going to schedule your building for you. However, they will help you add to sort of the things you want to be able to accomplish within your schedule. When you go back to those 6 levers and some of the points that Sharon made as well, both of these will really help with that and thinking about how do you want to do that. And these are two really tremendous links to do that. So the school-wide model, which is that's sort of where I come from with my work, and Sharon, you're working with Stephanie and Acadians. So, so I think those are tools. We're going to post this, the whole thing. We're going to post the thing, and that we'll give the slides too, so you can see where the links are and you can click on them if you need to. Let's see. And then this is us, right? So we're here if you need us. You know, this is the Facebook group. All of you sort of connected through that. We're up over 1,100 in the administrative Facebook group at this point, which is fantastic. You know, it's been great. I see Ernie Ortiz is with us tonight, and Ernie is one of the other administrators of the administrative Facebook page too. So, Sharon, do you have other thoughts before we open it up to questions?
Just don't be scared to begin. Make a plan. Just start with your English language arts block and just begin, collaborate with your building leaders and just begin, because it's the systems that truly make it all work, that protected time and that effective teacher efficacy and collaboration and data, and it all works within the MTSS system. Don't be afraid. You'll get a schedule. It may not be perfect when you first start, but you refine it as you go. That's what we did. We thought, oh, no, we need a little more time here. We need less time here. This didn't work well. And it's dynamic. You just keep going. You keep refining.
Yeah, every year, little tweak, little this and that. I have yet to do the perfect one. And don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough, right?
Right.
Like, get started with something. And even if you got to do K to 2 and focus on that first and let 3 to 5 swim on their own in the deep end, so be it for now. Get moving on it though.
Yeah. And also, I can't say enough about ongoing professional development. You know, once you have a system in place, you've got your schedule, or while you're developing, just building the knowledge base of your teachers to help them through the this change that's coming with the systems in place, this master schedule, and collaboration. Just bring in that professional development support to help your teachers along every year, 3 times a year. And Stephanie was part of that professional development on our campus with the data piece. And it's just imperative. It helps your teachers become reading experts.
Questions? We can go back in the slides too if anyone wants to see something.
Question coming in, is your data meeting every 3 weeks? So Sharon, I think you mentioned a cycle of switching up your small groups every 3 weeks. And what data are you using for progress monitoring to make the changes?
So with the, that's a tier 2 intervention. So that's skills-based, reading skills-based. And at Loudon, we used 95% the diagnostic assessments that come with the, and materials and process to clean up from 95 to clean up the lowest skill deficits. So at the end of the 3-week cycle, the grade level would get together and look at who has achieved mastery, and then reshuffle the kids to according to their next lowest skill deficit. So that's how it would roll along every 3 weeks. And then you've got your materials, and there's logistics with it. But once you kind of get a system, get used to it, then you're meeting the students' needs, the lowest skill deficit all year long. That's why I think we were so successful at Loudon to reach those 5th and 6th graders, closing that reading achievement gap, creating more accurate readers through the 3-week cycle and really cleaning up the lowest skill deficits.
Sharon, related.
So I was going to say, in Pentucket, we use Dibbles 8 currently. We had used Dibbles next prior. We use iReady at grades 3 through 8 as well. And we have 3 big data meetings a year where we really go through and and meet with just the teachers by grade level with the staff, and we really go through. And then in between those, so probably more like 6 to 8 weeks, not as frequently as you, Sharon, the reading teacher in each building works with the principals, and they meet a little less formally, but they reshuffle if they need to. And we use a grid that was all from sort of Reading First, University of Oregon. And, it looks at kids who are doing well in everything, kids who have singular deficits, and kids who have sort of double deficits and so forth. So we manage it that way in the bigger picture. So, and we have a protocol that we go through, but we have drilled down assessments too. So much like you use the 95%, we might use a quick phonics screener. We might use the PAST, so we've drilled down, and then we have even deeper diagnostic that we might do. And I think I've posted that one before, our assessment sort of protocol of how we do it as well. So, and we're getting better, and sort of COVID throws wrinkles into all this anyways. But
and to your point, Brent, for our school, we would have a school-wide data meetings 3 times a year as well, in August and then December or January. December, we did the mid-year assessment. January, we'd meet and pour over the data student by student, and then the end of the year as well. We had those data meetings, the school-wide. The 3-week cycle was just for those kids who had they were not proficient, and their
the targeted kids. Yep.
Yeah, targeted students. Yep. But we used Acadian's progress monitoring on top of that. It was kind of a double check. We had a diagnostic assessment or the end of the unit, the 3-week cycle assessment to see for mastery. And then we check it with our progress monitoring with Acadians to see how it was lining up, and it just was a multiple measure. And so that's the 3 times a year school-wide data, that was imperative. And the teachers were so hungry for that mid-year, beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of the year data to come out.
Yeah. Questions are flying in here, so I'm going to try to get caught up. Would you start? Oh, they're coming in so fast, I keep losing them. Would you start in a large district in a state that is far behind on the science of reading and dyslexia? So would you start by collecting data first and PD for administrators to get their support around scheduling, et cetera, and then PD for teachers? So would you start with administrators and data is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I always say start with data first. But if your only data is F&P levels, then you gotta, like, how valuable is that? It's not going to tell you much. So, and I don't mean to be an F&P hate system session today. That's not what it's meant to be. But at least looking at what data you have and trying to determine how does that correlate to your state level data, proficiency levels, and so forth. But yeah, starting with the data, helping to have some conversations, because of, like, everyone wants to improve literacy outcomes. It's not like, you know, teachers and administrators are waking up today and thinking, I'm going to go in today and make sure kids don't know how to read. Like, that's not what they do, right? So having those conversations around how you go about it. But yeah, and starting to put, like, even in a balanced literacy system, people believe in interventions. They believe in, you know, like, those things happen. You can begin to set up a schedule that could be utilized even in that setup. And yet, once you sort of learn more and the teachers learn more, they start to make better use of those time and resources that you've established for them. You know, that's why I always think the systems are critically important to put in at very early going.
I think it's dependent on your district as well. My district was a larger district, and so I just was the lone ranger. I kind of thought outside the box, and I was allowed to do it, and it was well received after we started making some success, you know, and then people started taking notice. So sometimes it starts with one school, but I think it's imperative to eventually have your district on the same page. And if your district and your building level leaders aren't versed in the science of reading, by all means start, but you can't know everything. I knew very little. I just knew we weren't meeting the needs of the students. It was the data, and I found out more about the data, thank goodness for Stephanie and her support. And I went to conferences. I went to the National Title I conference. That's where I met Dr. Susan Hall, and I had read her books. And you just have to begin and glean, and you're not going to know everything. But students' lives are at stake, literally. When you're in a high poverty area and there's a lot of challenges and a lot to overcome. And I told my staff, these kids are smart. They're coming in, we have smart kids. We're not effectively meeting their needs. How are we going to do that? And that drills back down to the data and figuring out, you know, what's the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics? Why is there such a difference? Why do we have to have such a good understanding of phonemic proficiency, what that looks like, and how that builds through the grade levels, you know, and that comes step by step. And that's what I mean about the professional development, bringing it in, helping year after year, helping your teachers become more knowledgeable. A principal cannot do it all. I about killed myself in the beginning. And then I started wising up and bringing in professional development and just being shoulder to shoulder with my teachers, learning alongside. We learn together. And that's how we started becoming successful.
Couple questions about middle school. So is this possible to extend up into middle school? What does scheduling look like in middle school? Brent, I know you taught in a middle school. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit, or you were a principal in a middle school.
Yeah, I've done both. I've taught and I was a principal in the middle school. So sort of, yes. You know, it takes on a different lens. You certainly can have intervention blocks. To some extent, there's some advantages to a middle school because everyone's sort of on the same bell schedule, right? As opposed to in the elementary school, everything's sort of staggered a little bit. So you can build it in. You know, there are a lot of different things you can do where you can prioritize. The problem, though, in the middle school is, you know, there's only so much time in the day. So when you've got a 13-year-old and you're telling them they have to go to do an additional reading block for the thing that they already don't like doing, they don't tend to like that, right? And it also means that they're missing something. Where in the elementary school, we can sort of manage and mitigate what it is that they're missing. No, they're missing something where their friends are. So it can be a little bit more challenging. So you have to think about it in terms of short term, like quarters, and you turn the kids over. So even if they didn't necessarily master something, I mean, unless it's a special ed service, but even if they didn't necessarily master something, you can't keep them in there all year. You lose their sort of motivation with it. But if you group them in a very focused manner using some drill down diagnostics, you can make a lot of progress. And we actually started doing it this year with our 7th and 8th graders. And the teachers are, have a group of 8 kids in an intervention class, and it's an English teacher. It's not a special ed teacher, it's an English teacher. And they themselves are learning, okay, I know these kids need work to improve their fluency. I don't know how to do that. Well, I'll show you. I'll teach you how to teach them fluency. And they start doing it. And it does make it makes a difference. So you can do it. It takes a little bit, it has a little bit different of a lens, but the theory behind it with the data-driven stuff is there. Yeah. I'm going to put the slides in the chat too, if anyone wants them.
Excellent. Do the two of you have ideas about how to get buy-in from administrators? So some folks in the session are not administrators, but they're trying to make this kind of change in their building and need to convince their administrators. What suggestions do you have?
Well, it depends if the site has some data. That's always a good starting point. But I refer people, honestly, Stephanie, to your Reading Science Academy and, your overview of what it takes to become a good reader. I mean, the science of reading. Just start with little video chunks. Just start the conversation and follow up with it, and be, with your excitement and exuberance. Just take a couple a couple students that have made growth in your school just by the changes you've made. That speaks for itself. Like I said, success breeds success, and you have to begin, and that will begin the conversation and hopefully changing some minds if there's a closed mindset. I love the book by Carol Dweck. Oh my gosh, now the title flew out of my
Growth
head.
mindset.
Growth mindset, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to your point, Stephanie or Brent, everyone wants, that's the goal of our schools. We want to have great readers. We want our students to read fluently, accurately, with understanding, and have opportunity in life. It's about equity. And that's honestly where I begin.
Yeah. And I would say, so if you're maybe a reading specialist or you're a classroom teacher, don't go it solely alone. Try to find your allies and learn together a little bit. And oftentimes building administrators would give leeway, if you can get your grade level together and start to change things, and you don't come with a problem, you come with a solution. That is often the first step. I'm the first administrator to go, oh, you want to take something off my plate? Go ahead, right? Just don't have it come back to bite me later, but sure, go ahead, right? And so those are the types of things so if you have 3-4 colleagues at a grade level and you're sort of on the same page about it, maybe you can do it at the grade level. You can change things up a little bit. And you have to leverage it that way, to some extent.
I know when we began being successful at Loudon, there were 12 different school districts up and down the state that would travel, spend the night, and come and walk our campus because they were so hungry to see change. They wondered, what is this? How do we create this at our site? And when they would walk the rooms and see the level of student engagement and the kids being so on task and learning like crazy, they just were astounded. And for us, it was like, this is what we do every day. This is how it is every day, no matter what time of day you walk in. This is how the kids are, and it helps with the behavior.
We had the same thing, and they were convinced. It was like, so what's the curriculum you bought? And it's like, no, it's really not. I assure you, it's not a curriculum. It's the system of it. And the reality is you could do this with a lot of different curriculums, not Lucy Calkins or something like that, but you could do this with lots of different curriculums and lots of different tools, like, well, you must have just chosen like Wilson and done that. Like, no, like some kids got Wilson who needed it, but other kids got this and other kids got that, like, no, we built the knowledge base and we built the tools. But what we had is the common mindset around it and the shared vision of it, that's what happened. So,
a question for Sharon about the walk to learn block. Were your teachers all moving through the same curriculum at the same pace, or were different groups in different classes at significantly different places within a grade level? Was it like a pacing guide and everybody had to
there's a
through it the same way?
pacing guide, and it just, the differentiation was the scaffolding of instruction for the intensive and strategic students. So they were all moving, all the teachers in the grade level were moving along at the same pace with the same guide and standards. However, the instruction was targeted, like intensive kids, if they're if they're so far behind in their reading, it was the intensive and strategic was more like a double dose of what they were getting in intervention, because that, along with building vocabulary and teaching to the standard, but they were still getting what they needed in core because they weren't reading yet or reading well enough.
Yeah, we did, it was the same thing really in our building. It wasn't quite so, but we did whole class tier 1, and then the second part was the small group stuff. And I might have a special ed teacher who might say, you know what, I got 2 kids in the room next door who need to work on this for the next 2 weeks. I'm pulling them with me. And they're in the same grade level, but they're all on the same schedule. So yep, pull them in. And it was a lot of, similar to that. It was maybe more selective as opposed to applying it to everyone. Can I pull them in? Like, yeah, go ahead, go.
Yeah.
Get after it.
So I want to be mindful of people's time. If I have overlooked your question or it hasn't gotten addressed, would you just type it in quickly or unmute yourself and ask it of Sharon and Brent?
Well, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're
Right.
happy to help. So we've got anyone from Massachusetts on here? We got anyone? I don't know. I don't.
No one who wants to reveal that they're from Massachusetts.
New Hampshire. There we go. All right. Close enough. So good. PA in the house. Right, Ernie.
We will share the recording. Yeah, so somebody's asking about the recording. I will share it in the administrators group. I'll share it in any place where I shared the announcement about tonight. How about that?
Sure.
Is it okay, Brent, if I share the handout in the same way with the recording?
Yeah. Yep, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, we'll share both. Yeah, this was terrific. Thank you both so much for doing this. I know you've helped a lot of folks conceptualize things and make it a little bit more doable. So I appreciate you very much.
Right.
Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you, everyone.